Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcasts, Addict, CastBox, Player FM, Audible, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have a wonderful episode lined up for you today. Holly Peppe will be here to celebrate Sophie and the Swans. Later in the show, we'll be meeting Jasmine Hawkins, who'll be celebrating Jason Becomes a Hero. And Penny Schneider will be here to celebrate Arty, her wonderful graphic novel. Before we invite our guests into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Join us right now from a lake that is full of colorful ducks, noisy gray geese, and elegant white swans. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new book. It's called Sophie and the Swans. Please welcome to the show, Holly Peppe. Hey, Holly, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thanks.
That lake sounds lovely.
It is really lovely. It is a beautiful lake. It's a small lake, but it's full of wildlife and bird life. It's just swans and egrets and blue herons and ducks and geese. So it's a really wonderful place to live.
Wow. It sounds like a little bit of heaven here on earth.
It certainly is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell me about Sophie and the Swans.
Okay, well, Sophie and the Swans is a fictional story, but it came from my true experience, which is living here on the lake, and it's about an hour north of New York City. And when we first came here, I was enthralled by these swans, and this one pair of swans, just so gorgeous, and so they go by each day, and I named them Romeo and Juliet, because you may know that swans stay together for life. They make this little, when they put their heads together, it looks like a heart. Mm-hmm. And in fact, it really is. It's just, they're very devoted to each other. So anyway, every spring, they would bring their babies over to us. I would come down by the shoreline, and they had these cygnets, which is baby swans are called cygnets. And I was just so fascinated by the beauty and devotion of these birds that I started doing a lot of research on swans. And I learned all kinds of things that they do, in fact, trust one another, and they also will trust humans. They're not, people think they're aggressive, but they're only aggressive if they're attacked or if they're trying to defend their family. So I decided that we would help them out because the snapping turtles are the enemies of swans, and they're all around the lake. There are various places. They lurk below the surface, And when this little cygnets swim by, they just reach up and grab them and pull them down. So they really are. That's why you may have seen swans. The mama swans keep the babies on their back, keep the cygnets on their back, and they float around with them. It's quite adorable to see it. All the little cygnets climb under the mother's wings. So anyway, I was clearly enthralled by that as well. But we decided we would feed them these nutritious swan pellets. They use them in all the rehabilitation places, and they're actually designed to keep to keep birds healthy. And so we started feeding them, and the little ones knew us so well that as they grew up, they would all come over with the parents, with Romeo and Juliet, and they would nod their heads hello and nod their heads and sometimes make noise. They all have a different voice, which is kind of interesting. Swans have a different voice, and the male swans have a deeper voice than the female swans. But you hear them talking, you hear them just going back and forth. It's really quite extraordinary. So they would, anytime I went down near the lake, they would come over. And so I felt like, I was sort of in love with these swans. And for 5 years, they came over and we fed them. And I mentioned the snapping turtles because I originally started feeding them so the cygnets wouldn't have to bottom feed near the shoreline, which is where there's these turtles lurk below the surface. That was the beginning. And then we realized that they were growing up quickly and they were healthy, so we continued to feed them once or twice a day. Now, where did Sophie come from? I was so concerned about these swans because I thought, I hope they never suffer from the often thoughtless actions of human beings, I hope that they're always protected. But I had heard that some swans were not, and that people had been mean to them. And this was like a very organic process that I decided I would write a book. First, I was going to write about a factual book about swans. And then I thought, no, I'd like to write a book that teaches a gentle lesson about how we need to treat one another and how we need to treat animals and birds. And, God's earth is all about nature. So I started to write a book, and while I was in the process, I spoke with a friend of mine who had a 12-year-old daughter named Sophie. And originally I asked Sophie if she wanted to do the drawings for the book. But we went along, she was so busy with school. Her mother is also an artist, but it just looked like it was that was not going to work out. But I said, I'm going to name the book after you anyway, Sophie, because she's such a lovely young woman who knows, she just, not that she just knows right from wrong. She's vibrant, she's creative, she's kind. And I thought she would be the main character in the book. And even though I was the one feeding the swans. So she stepped in, and now she's a character in the book, the main character, Sophie and the Swans. So that's how it started. And then the book really does represent this place because the lake is there, the island is there. I have a writing cabin, which is below the house on the way to the lake, which used to be a tool shed. And now it's my writing cabin, that's what I call it. There's flowers all around it, and it overlooks the lake, and it's just such a wonderful place to go and work. And so in the book, I have this writing cabin. You can see pictures of it, and Sophie goes there to write songs and poems, and she does write songs and poems. So I thought that was fun.
Yeah. Very neat. You're painting this beautiful picture of, just this idyllic place, and that in and of itself is worth reading. But I think there's a little bit more to this book. There's some danger almost, or a villain of some kind, maybe?
Yes, you're correct. What happens is that Sophie is feeding the swans one day, and she sees a boy across the way, and he's a new neighbor, and his name is Sam. And he comes over, and she says, you can feed the swans with me if you want. And he says, okay. And they're happily feeding the swans, and suddenly a bigger boy, who happens to be Ned, Sam's older brother, comes marching down the hill. And we don't like to call people bullies, but he displays bullying behavior, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
The way this starts is that she's in the cabin writing a song, and she hears noises outside, and she sees that Romeo is splashing in the water. And she looks out the window, and she sees that he's hissing and moving around in circles, and she knows something is wrong. So she looks out, and she sees this bigger boy, who is Sam's brother, Ned, throwing rocks at the swans. And luckily, he didn't hit them, but Romeo starts hissing, and he says, they're so dumb, the boy said, and lets out a mean laugh. Sophie said firmly, swans are really smart, and they don't like bullies. And then the boy says, I'll do what I want, but he drops the stone and goes back up the hill. So then she sees another boy on the dock a little while later, and she motions to him, and she realizes it's not the mean boy, so she motions to him to come over. So he comes over, and she said, do you want to feed the swans? And he says, yes, we just moved here, and they have a lovely chat. And then she said, well, I thought swans were dangerous, Sam says.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, Ned, that's the brother, of course. That's what my brother said anyway. Brother Ned said anyway. And she said, no, swans are not dangerous. If you're kind to them, they'll remember you forever. And so I'm Sophie, by the way. So they got to know each other. And then they're just about to feed the swans again. And Ned comes marching down the hill. And he's just the opposite of Sam, who's very gentle and lovely. And Ned is just aggressive, and he starts shouting at Sophie and says, crazy swan girl, all that food is going to make them fat. And Sophie says, swans never eat too much. And anyway, and he really bullies her as he had bullied the swans by throwing rocks at them.
Mm-hmm.
So Sam says, oh, I'm so sorry about him. He's such a bully these days. We used to do a lot of things together, but now he's getting into trouble. And then so he said, I'm sorry to hear that, but you can come and feed my swans whenever you like. So we know now that we have these three characters,
Mm-hmm.
and Sophie and Sam are bonded. They can, and Ned, we're not sure what's going on with Ned, but we know that he acts like a bully. So a few days later, Sophie and Sam are feeding the swans, and they hear something across the lake. And Sophie gets her binoculars, and she looks over, and she sees someone's in a small boat, his arms waving as a boat goes back and forth wildly, and he's having problems. And Sophie looks in the binoculars and says, oh, it's Ned. So Sam says, yes, maybe that's the old boat that came with the house. But it was a motorboat. And so he looks in the binoculars and he shouts across the lake and says, "Is there a paddle?" And Ned just keeps waving his arms and waving his arms, and he's obviously stuck out there and upset. And this is really the crux of the story. Sophie says, "You want to paddle out and save him?" And Sam says, "He wouldn't do that for us. Maybe we should leave him out there, let the grown-ups deal with it." And then Sophie says, "No, he's been really mean to everyone, hasn't he?" And then she said, "But it's getting cold. We should probably bring him a paddle, even if he is a bully sometimes. My mom said we should always try and treat others with kindness, even though they're not kind to you." So Sam says, "Well, I guess." So they get in the canoe, they take their life jackets, and they get in the canoe, and they go out to save him, basically. And when he gets out there, he's very upset, and he has his glasses have dropped in the water. And so he's cold, he's alone, he feels like, oh no, and he says, "Mom's going to kill me when she sees that I've lost my glasses." And then he says, I called because I knew that you must be out feeding the swans at this hour. And that's why I knew if I yelled that I would probably find you there and on the shoreline. And Sophie says, "Well, you're going to have to thank Romeo and Juliet for saving you then, aren't you?" And Ned shrugs his shoulders and says, "Well, I guess so." So they give him a paddle, and they all paddle back together to the shore. And while they're doing that, Romeo and Juliet fly overhead. They're so gorgeous when they fly. And they run back to the dock, and Sophie says, "They really are beautiful, aren't they?" And Ned says quietly, "They really are." And he watched the swans circle and prepare to land together on the glistening lake.
Lovely.
So that's the story, and it's a very gentle lesson, but, it's, if you're kind to people, even though they treat you badly, if you're kind to them, they may turn around.
Yeah.
That's really the message.
Yeah. It's a lovely message, and I think it's a wonderful message, and the illustrations that you show me are absolutely gorgeous. So I'm imagining a family would have a real fun time reading this book, talking.
Yeah.
It's a great way to open up a conversation
Exactly.
about what might be going on at school.
That's right. I agree. I also think, it's a good way to chat with parents, grandparents, whoever's reading the book aloud, or if they're with the children, because sometimes, bullying is difficult for a child to tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they don't understand or know that they should go to a trusted parent, a trusted adult, and actually talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, this is the whole idea of this, is to have people understand. First of all, this boy, I left out an important part of this, and that is that he was bullied in school when he got these big glasses.
Mm-hmm.
He was bullied by other boys in school, and so they had to move because of that, and this is why they were here. So bullying didn't come from example. No one set the example for bullying. But some people who are bullied, children who are bullied, then go off to bully others.
Yep. And I think that's a real important conversation that families can have, and helping kids have empathy, knowing that it's wrong to treat others badly, and we don't want you to just sit back and suffer if you're the target of bullying behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important to, after we get some help and after we get ourselves safe, to have some empathy and hopefully show some kindness that would turn the person around, like Ned was turned around.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And I think I had some children read this book as I had finished it,
Mm-hmm.
and they were so perceptive. They totally got it right away. They understood what, not just the plot, but how how kindness can turn people around. And it seemed pretty simple, but it's not if you're the one being bullied. And I
Right.
think that's why, kids should go to a trusted
Mm-hmm.
adult
Mm-hmm.
and talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
Um,
Holly, what inspired, because you were sharing, and at some point in this conversation, I want to talk a little bit about the wonderful career you had in my chosen field of magic. But what inspired you to become a children's author at this point in your life?
well, my secret life is I was a poetry scholar. I was the teacher for many years, and I started my very first teaching job was teaching teaching music to grades 1 through 6. So I worked with little children. I loved them. I loved teaching music to them. I didn't really see bullying there. That wasn't, I didn't, and I don't think that was really the setting. It was in a rural school in Vermont, and they were little, the children were little. But later on, I taught in high school for 4 years, and I could see the students. I was teaching poetry and literature, and I could see there was a split between the literary kids and the people who played on the guys who played on the football team.
Mm-hmm.
They're really like two factions. So I was teaching all of them English, and I decided I would start a program that would get everybody together. And so I started something called the Poetry Van, and I would pile and have them all write poems about things that mattered to them, and then pile them into a van, and we would go to rest homes and factories where people who were psychologically challenged were working, and we would all read to them. They would read their poems to them, and then they would give each person a poem, and then I would take my guitar, because those are the days of hippie days, and play music, and they would sing Michael Rode a Boat Ashore, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was it was an eye-opener for me, because this, first of all, it showed the kids this other life, which is like the saddest places on earth are some of the rest homes where there were no family, and these people who just didn't have a lot to do, and and so we would really bring light into that environment. And so we went to many rest homes around nearby the school, and I found that the kids, the students, little by little, the boundaries sort of fell apart, and they were talking to each other and engaging with each other and complimenting each other. And I thought, that this is like almost avoiding, or not avoiding, but preventing bullying, because we've united them, and there was no more competition. And it was also, some of the poems were good, some weren't great, but they all supported each other.
Yeah.
So that was a really good experience. They were like equalizers, these trips, because it got all the kids together.
Yeah.
So I always felt good about that. I've taught many years after that. I taught in college and et cetera, but it always stays with me. And I also have 3 brothers and a sister. And so, I remember when my little brother was bullied at one time on a beach, and I stood up to the bully. And I shouldn't say bully, but it was a mean kid, And so anyway, it just felt like the right time now with my beautiful swans.
Yeah.
So it just, it's one of those things. It's like the creative urge just happens, and there you are.
That's wonderful. Well, we want to encourage everybody to pre-order their book. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's called Sophie and the Swans. And our guest has been the author, Holly Peppe. Holly, thanks so much for being with us.
And thanks so much for this chat. It's very, very, very fun.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Georgia. Our guest is here today to celebrate her beautiful picture book. Is called Jason Becomes a Hero. Please welcome to the show, Jasmine Hawkins. Hey, Jasmine, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully. Jasmine has this beautiful, radiant smile. It's obvious that she is very proud of Jason Becomes a Hero.
I am.
Tell us about it, please.
The book is about my son. He has autism. And he's on the lower end of the spectrum, and so he gets misdiagnosed a lot as a neurotypical child. And so I wanted to create a book that would turn his autism into superpowers. And so in the book, he saves his classmates at school from being bullied. And I use different things like he has a love for animals, and he was even able to pet a goose. I've never seen anything like that in my life. So in the book, he's able to understand and talk to animals. He has super strength. He here at the house, and so I had that in the book as well. So I just wanted him to see his autism as a superpower in his life. And so I have him and his siblings, myself and my husband inside of the book, and his dog.
So cool. If you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about how your son's autism manifests? We just hear this word, and it's such a broad spectrum. I think it's important to know how kids who are not neurodiverse are different from one another, so we don't just lump them all into one bag.
Yeah. Well, I guess for Jason, he's really laid back. He's really laid back, but when he's triggered, that's when you're able to tell that he has autism. He has these different noises that he makes. He gets really, really hyper. And math is his thing. So every autistic child has at least one thing that they're extremely good at. And for Jason, it's math. He can literally do mental math in his head. It's really, it's astonishing because I'm like, math is not my thing at all. But yeah. And outside of that, he does get misdiagnosed. Before they changed the word, it was called Asperger's. That's no longer used because of a negative situation that happened with the, creator of that name. And so that's no longer used, but that is basically what Jason has.
Okay. It's incredible how this thing of known as autism has, that hasn't grown, but how our understanding of it has grown over the years. When I was in human services 35, 40 years ago, and we worked with kids who were autistic, and those kids were all nonverbal and, very low functioning. Wasn't a whole lot that they could do. And we know now that kids on the spectrum can be at where those kids were that I was working with, all the way up to folks who are doing incredible things.
Yes, that is very true.
Now, I have to ask you, this is a kind of a not personal to me, personal to kind of to me. Your son, when he does the mental math in his head, does he make his teachers crazy because he doesn't? I'm guessing he doesn't write out the work. He just puts the down.
Honestly, they're really impressed. I know he does get pulled out for small group, just so that we can strengthen his math and his reading skills. But they are really impressed with how amazing he does with math. Now, does he drive me crazy with the math? Yes, because it's always a competition. He's always like, I bet you don't know what 1,000 times 1,000 is. No, Jason. And no, I do not. Where's the calculator? But yeah.
Yeah, my son was one of those guys. He did math in his head, and we would get these notices that he was failing, and I go in this going, how is he failing math? Oh, he's getting all the answers right. He just doesn't write down his work. And I'm like,
what?
Wait a minute. You gotta, but I can't tell if he's doing it the right way. But the answer's right. Anyways, that's
cool for you.
So, was there one incident that happened to your son that inspired you to write this book?
I do know. Well, what inspired me was that Jason was bullied, but he wasn't bullied necessarily by other students. He was bullied by his teacher. And it started in pre-K into kindergarten, and I didn't really know that that's what it was until later on when I spoke to Jason. And so that inspired me. And I know that there are other children who have special needs and that are bullied. And so I wanted my book to be a beacon for them, to show them that they are more than just their diagnosis. They are superheroes. They're powerful.
There may be a lot of parents who are listening to this. We also have a lot of educators who listen to this, who are, maybe their head is exploding over the idea that a teacher could be bullying a kid.
Right.
But I do know it happens because I witnessed it. Talk a little bit about, how did you react when you saw this happening?
I know that I used to get phone calls almost every single day. Jason's not doing this. Jason's not doing this. You need to come pick him up. And a lot of it was because I was a stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. And so they thought that I had nothing else going. I wasn't doing anything else. So I needed to come pick him up. And it was this one time that I picked him up from school, and he had this massive knot on his head. And they told me, oh, well, he just was playing around and he fell, but the knot was just so big. And it was at that point where I'm like, something's not right. Mm-hmm. So I was constantly up talking to the administration. Went to his doctor because, like, I started to see signs of that there was something different. I used to be a teacher myself, so I kind of felt like this was autism, but I didn't want to do labels. You know, especially in the Black community, it's very taboo for us to do labels. So I wanted to make sure that that's what it was. And so I got him tested. And when I found out that he really was autistic, I fought for his 504, and I made sure that before we left that school, I had an IEP.
Okay. Were you able to get him out of the class where the teacher was bullying him?
So, honestly, no. But she was removed from the school. And it was at that very last meeting. It was the end of the school year. And she literally had Jason sit in the classroom and watch all of his classmates participate in the the celebration that they have at the end of the school year, they had him sit and watch while everybody had fun, and he couldn't partake. And he was triggered. So I had to come up to the school early, and I called a meeting immediately. Mm-hmm. And I was crying in that meeting because I'm like, this was going on all school year, and you guys did not listen to me. And now look at what's going on. And so they removed her from the school.
Oh, thank goodness. And thank goodness you had the strength to continue to advocate for your son. I think it's so important that parents be supportive and work with teachers and kind of begin with the idea that there's going to be a parent-teacher partnership. But if you're seeing something that's not right, you need to stand up and make sure your kid gets what they need to stay safe and to learn.
Yeah, because if we're not doing it, then who will?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm curious, now that the book is available and out there and Jason's story, Jason's a superhero, how does he feel about that? What does he think about the book?
He honestly loves the book. He used to take it to school all the time. I would come up to his school and read it to his classmates. And he still to this day asks, how's the book doing? How's the book doing? And so, I just want to just continue to make him proud and keep pushing out his book so that, like it helps him to feel special, that people want to read a story that's inspired by him.
Yeah. Any thoughts of making this a series?
Honestly, yes, I have thought about making it a series. The way that I ended it, I ended the story on a cliffhanger. So yeah.
So what kind of conversations do you think families can have as they're reading Jason Becomes a Hero together?
That, one of the main things, in the book, where Jason accidentally uses his powers of strength, and pushes the bully. I feel like, cause I get a lot of questions from the students like, is it okay to fight back? And I'm like, no. Sometimes, it is self-defense, but you always talk to the teacher first. You always find a way to de-escalate. And so that, I feel like that part of the story is a conversation piece, to help your child understand that you don't have to always react. You can always deflect.
Yeah. Great advice. And I think that the superpower of Jason being able to talk to animals, I think that would be something that kids would find really neat. And I'm imagining most kids would want to have that superpower themselves.
I know I do. I love animals. So yes, I know I would.
Yeah, cool. Well, we should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Jason Becomes a Hero and also find out more about you.
Okay. Well, you can find Jason Becomes a Hero on my website at hawkinsdivineprint.com and on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Oh, cool. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Jason Becomes a Hero. It's a brand new picture book from our guest, Jasmine Hawkins. Jasmine, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Hey there, families! Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is Family Fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. Join us right now from beautiful Long Island in New York State. Our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new graphic novel. It's called Arty. Please welcome to the show, Penny Schneider. Hey, Penny. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
I'm delighted to have you on. I'm going to say this up front. I've mentioned this many times. I didn't appreciate that graphic novels were books in the same way I gave the same credit to picture books and chapter books and novels and whatnot. My son was way, and probably still way, into graphic novels and comics. And while I supported that and would get lots of anime for him and graphic novels and bring him home, every once in a while I would go into his room and say, dude, can you just read one book without pictures? And I didn't give him the credit that he was actually reading, and that there's a lot of great literature that is being delivered to kids through graphic novels.
Yeah.
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 Is that something that is right there in the front of your mind when you're creating your graphic novels?
The style of the book, you mean? Like, I love graphic novels. Like, to me, I think that graphic novels, honestly, it's like twice the ride.
Uh-huh.
So you're reading the words, and then the illustrator is like giving you another whole little backstory and secret clues and tips and things, so I feel like you're taking twice the ride. So.
Awesome. Well, tell us about the ride we're going to take when we pick up Arty.
So Arty is a betta fish, and he's not your typical, you see a fish, you fight betta fish. What he dreams of is having a friend. So he learns in, growing up how he's supposed to be. You see a fish, you fight, you're territorial and you protect. But Arty always felt like he was different. And then he decided to figure out, do I have to be like this? And then he went on a journey to should I give away? He goes to look for the wise old snail because he wants advice, because that's the wisest entity underwater. So, and on the way, he meets a silly sea slug and his world flips upside down. He actually gets a friend, and he didn't even know that he could do it.
Well, that's wonderful. Silly sea, I can't even say it. Silly sea slug. I think that would be the first thing parents and kids should do when they're reading Arty, is try to say that name once, never mind 3 times fast. Was there anything in particular that inspired this book?
Well, I am a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout my many years of teaching, I'll always meet kids, they put on like this tough exterior, and they feel like, that's being cool or being tough, and that's how they're supposed to be. And then once I get to know them better, I realize they're really good kids. They're just putting on this tough exterior, and then everybody winds up liking them so much better once their real inside comes out, so it's kind of like Arty. So yeah, he knows what he's supposed to be, things tough and whatever, but then he realizes he just wants to be nice. He wants a friend.
That's really neat. And what a great message for us to talk about with our kids, that that kid that has this really tough facade, maybe there's a gentle potential friend behind that facade.
Yeah.
So how long have you been creating graphic novels?
Well, I write and illustrate graphic novels and children's books. I probably started that probably almost 20 years now. Since my daughter was little, I started writing the stories, but Arty itself took me about 5 years.
Wow. And is that because it took so long doing the illustrations?
Well, Arty's 100 pages.
Okay.
So it's long. It has the 3 chapters, and then the last chapter is a blooper reel. But yeah, Arty actually started off as a picture book. And and then I felt like there was still so much more to tell. It wasn't over just because, he decided he had a friend. Then chapter 2 is, well, what do friends do anyway? And Arty had to figure that out. And then Slug needs a name. And then there's the bloopers. But I just felt like there was more to tell. And I took some writing classes. And in the writing classes, they really steered you away from graphic novels. I think it was kind of what you were saying. You know, they wanted you to write the real book or whatever, you know, with just not all the comic style, but this is always, I love this style. And if you asked me when I was little what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I used to say a cartoonist, I wanted to be the next Walt Disney.
That's very, very cool. So 100 pages.
Yeah.
And probably 6 to 8 panels on each page.
It changes. Some
Okay.
of them have, you know, it depends on what some of them will be a full page. Some have like a bunch. It depends on the part of the story.
But we're talking 300 or 400 illustrations.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
it's kind of mind boggling when you think about it. Now, I have to ask, and if I'm asking trade secrets, you know, just let me know. But I've had a number of illustrators of graphic novels on, and one of them was very clear. She had a wonderful character, but was very simple. And as we were talking, she said, "Look, I knew I was going to have to draw this character like 100 times, and I wanted to do myself a favor, so it's really simple." And then about a week later, we had another illustrator on who was illustrating a nonfiction historical graphic novel. And he was so frustrated. It was based in ancient Greece, and there was so much detail that she had to have, and that process seemed like a nightmare.
Yeah.
So what's your process as you do it? You said that Arty started life as a picture book.
Yeah.
Does the story come first before the illustrations, or do you have something in mind? You know, do you see an illustration in your mind that kind of pushes the story forward?
It depends on the story. Arty, the story came first.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of loosely outline it and then kind of see where it went. You know, when I was drawing Arty, he has changed so much from the beginning. But I think betta fish are beautiful. So I just keep looking betta fish, and they're so flowy and it's motion. And, so it's never like it has to be exactly the same because he's moving in the water. So he's, you know, that can change a little bit. But, Slug in the book, he was kind of because I thought it would just be fun to draw. And then his personality and everything just kind of took off. So.
I have a betta fish story.
Yeah.
3 years ago, I'm moving my niece into her college dorm. And, you know, it's in the middle of Boston. So, you know, you get a park 8 blocks away, and they give you these big laundry hamper thingies on wheels to put all the stuff in. And she had so much stuff bringing into her dorm that first year. I think we had 4 different laundry bin carts. And her mom was pushing the one with her betta fish on top of everything. And of course, Boston, like probably New York and every big city, the sidewalks aren't perfect. And she hit a bump, and it went over and it smashed on the ground. But it mobilized all the students in all the dorms. People saw it, and they started running down, bringing water down and containers, and so it saved the betta fish.
That's awesome. And he was okay?
He was okay. Yep.
Oh,
yep.
good.
He lived to fight another day, as they say.
Oh, good. Very good.
So you've been teaching for quite a while. And everybody knows how difficult it is and how much work goes into teaching, especially these days. One of the things that we hear from typical classroom teachers, and a lot of our teacher authors are teaching kindergarten or the real young elementary age grades. And one of the things they're complaining about is the lack of their being able to be creative in their classroom, that everything is so structured that, and some teachers have said that they get a script of how how they're presenting their lesson plan. They have to follow the script. What about as an art teacher? Do you have a little bit more creative license in terms of what you can do in your classroom?
Well, I have to follow specific curriculums, but at the projects themselves and how I teach it is really up to me. I really made that my own. So I'm fortunate that way.
And I'm curious, what kind of what are the things that you need to teach in your art class to your high school kids?
Well, it depends what course you're teaching. So if I'm teaching like a drawing and painting 1 class, I'm teaching things like observational drawing, how to look at something and how to replicate that. I say artists are the greatest liars. That's what I tell my students, because you're looking at, let's say, a bowl of flour, a bowl of fruit, and then you're drawing it on the piece of paper. It's really not a bowl of fruit. It's an illusion. So how do you do that? And then I teach them, the principles of design, the elements of art and color theory and things like that. So that's all, but it's how I teach it, and to use different materials. They're working in pencil, they're working in acrylic paint, watercolor, and so on. So,
do you have a favorite medium that you create in?
I probably, and I say this to my students all the time, my favorite thing is a pencil. That's my favorite. I do love working in clay though, which I have a lot of my clay sculptures in my studio with me. But my favorite thing is a pencil.
Well, that's I shared with Penny beforehand. After my wife retired from teaching, she started taking art classes, and it's really become quite apparent that the pencil is her favorite tool.
Oh, wow.
She's really leaned hard into drawing, and we love going on trips, and we take pictures and bring them home, and it's like, do you remember where we saw this? And really bring it to life. So how can we inspire and support our kids who have a real interest in art, in creating, in drawing or painting?
One thing is just to have like materials available for them and let them do it. I remember when I have a daughter who's in college who actually is an art major also. When she was little, I would do whatever she wanted. We would draw, we would paint, we would go on walks and collect things. And then she would, make sculptures or collage, or I used to take her to art museums when she was like 3. The more they're exposed to these things, I think the more that they realize how awesome it is.
Yeah, that's neat. Neat. Tell me, and what about, because I've had different people tell me, I was automatically, if somebody, one of my kids came home with a drawing or painting or whatever, it's like, oh, that's fantastic. And I've heard people push back on that and say, well, it's not really all that fantastic. Where would you come down on that?
I would praise their efforts. You definitely say, wow, that's awesome. Tell me about it. And when they start telling you about it, because I'm certified K through 12. In the beginning of my teaching career, I taught elementary school for my first year. And a lot of times the little kids, when they're drawing things, I'm not really sure what it is, but their enthusiasm is there, and it looks awesome, but tell me about it. And they'll say, oh, this is what I ate for dinner, and this is me, and my mom, and my dad, and my dog, and meantime, just looks like whatever. But wow, that's awesome. So once they can start telling you about it, then,
Yeah. That's really neat. You were mentioning earlier that you, before the graphic novels, you were illustrating children's books.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you prefer, being the author-illustrator or being an illustrator for another author?
Author-illustrator, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I feel like the writing is only half the story. The pictures are the other half. So I feel like I want my voice in all of it.
And has anybody ever suggested that they take your story and give it to another illustrator? And if they did, how would you feel about that?
I haven't, but I think I would be sad.
I understand that. What might you be working on next?
Well, I'll tell you a secret.
Okay.
There is Arty TOO. And your first draft, when you draw everything out, it's called a dummy. And my dummy is complete.
Awesome.
And I did the inking. My process is I draw everything in pencil first.
Uh-huh.
And then I take a picture and I put it as the bottom layer and I use Procreate on my iPad. So the inking is just the black and white of your pictures. I sent that to my publisher and the ball is rolling.
That's great. That's really wonderful. Well, congratulations on Arty and congratulations on Arty 2. Where can we go to find out more about you and Arty and all the books that you've created?
My website is pennyschneider.com.
Uh-huh.
And I am on Instagram. I am Penny's Doodles. And I'm on Twitter at Penny Schneider. I think I'm on everything now. There's so
awesome.
many things to be on.
I know. Well, I guess we don't have to be on TikTok anymore, at least for the time being.
That's one of the only things I'm not on.
I was on it, and then I'm like, no one wants to see me dance, so we haven't really done anything on it. Now I guess it's going away. But anyways, we've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Arty. It's a great graphic novel from our guest, Penny Schneider. Penny, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We hope you'll take the time to subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite podcast. We love the iHeartRadio app. We love Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods. What a great site Good Pods is. Hey, while you're subscribing, if you could leave us a 5-star review, that would be so very helpful and spread the word about our mission so we can help all families grow closer through reading. We'd also love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest. We want to thank Jasmine Hawkins. Be sure to check out Jason Becomes a Hero. Penny Schneider. Be sure to check out her graphic novel, Arty. And, of course, want to thank Holly Peppe. Please be sure to check out Sophie and the Swans. I want to thank my amazing team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.